Okay, I got the rear shocks, Old Man OME Nitrocharger Sports, and I have also the extended rear brake hoses. Alright, now we got a back part. Looks like we have the bushing that goes in the bottom collar. And I believe the rest of this is all for the top bottom bolt holding the shock in. Came out pretty easy. I just put a breaker bar on it. That's a 17mm. So the best thing I found is I put a pipe wrench on the sleeve of the shock right at the top. Put the 17mm on it again up here, and really had to put a lot of effort into it, not being able to fit like a breaker bar in there or anything, but it did come loose, and it's still giving me resistance, obviously, probably the whole way, but it's coming now. So okay, I finally got this shock out, and I was prying on these washers against the point where it mounts to the frame and trying to pry on the bottom, and eventually was able to push the bottom of it up enough to where I could kind of swing it right here and pull on it and yank on it. It finally kind of popped loose up here and then came out. You don't even want to know how long I just spent trying to figure out how to get this rubber bushing inside of this collar. So what I did is I put the bushing on the sleeve where the shock absorber mounts. Then take the shock, and using this washer, I'm going to use, what I'm going to do is use this C-clamp if you can have a person, a second set of hands helping you out, I definitely recommend that, because this is pretty difficult to get started by yourself. There we go. Oh yeah, look at that, beautiful. Alright, the order to put this on. First is one of these kind of plain looking round ones. There's like 3 of them in the pack. Put this one on the bottom with the concave side down. Then one of your rubber bushings. Now this is important. The next one that you put on, there's only one of these in the kit. It's this washer that has this raised lip right here. Then you're going to put it into the shock mount on the car. And these are definitely tougher to compress than the stock shocks, so I guess that's a good thing. Let it back out. Make sure it goes through that hole nice and even. Yep, just like that. Okay. Now on the top, you just go straight to another one of these rubber bushings. And then another one of these flat-ish washers, this time the concave side up. And then obviously your lock nut, and make sure that the plastic insert rounded lip side goes up, obviously. And the old one that came off was a 17. This one is, you can use either a 19 millimeter or a 3/4 inch. It's not super tight. All you're doing at this point is just spinning the threads past that plastic insert on the lock nut. That's all you're doing, so it's not going to take a whole lot of force. This extra washer is definitely not used on that top mount assembly. So even though there's a washer already on this bolt for the bottom, I think they just gave it to you just in case you need an extra one, so I'm just going to go ahead and use both of them. And you just go until it bottoms out on the collar in there that the bushing is sitting on. It'll just bottom out and no need to crank it because it ain't going anywhere. Got the front and rear springs, and in this box right here should be the front shocks. Alright, so let's take these parts out to the garage and we can get started installing it. This is the bump stop that is stock to the car, and you'll be retaining this piece. You'll be keeping it. On my setup, what you see here is actually, this is part of my old lift kit. It's just a spacer. So this will come off, but we will reuse this. Okay, old spring, well, this is the top and this is the bottom, but comparison. Old spring, new spring. As you can see, it's not that much longer decompressed, but this is definitely a stiffer spring than this, and so it'll also, once the vehicle compresses it, it should be 2.5 inches taller than, more lift than the stock spring. And I can kind of tell just from pushing down on it that this new one is definitely stiffer. Look at that. So it's going to really handle well off-roading and overlanding and carrying all that extra weight. And just a side note, before you put the spring in, make sure you have that bump stop on there. There's going to be nothing worse than getting that spring in here and realizing that the bump stop's not in there. So, just a helpful tip. Okay, we are finally done with this side. After trying to get the spring turned the right way after I got it in there, and then the little locking pins on the compressor tool getting stuck on the spring because the spring is too big for those pins to fit around. Anyway, it's finally on there, and I'm going to do the other side next. Alright, so I had a revelation when I was doing this side, and I figured out when I took the old one out, and then now also when putting the new one in, that if you have the screws facing opposite directions on the spring, it makes it a lot easier to get it out. So I have one with the bolt on the top and one with the bolt on the bottom. So I'm going to show you how easy this is to get it back in. So put the camera down, try to show you that. That way. I just had this in here. Unbelievable. Here we go. Alright, you can see the shocks, the springs, and even the stainless brake hoses, extended length. Alright, so we are ready to rock. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and get started tearing down the old suspension, loosening bolts, taking things apart. Okay, I'm going to have to take the sway bar off. The reason I didn't want to do that is because last time I installed the lift kit, I tried removing the sway bar and all of the nuts inside the frame holding the bolts broke. And I've already drilled out and replaced a couple of them, but not all of them. So what I'm going to have to do is drill out these bolts, and then for now I can just take the sway bar off. I still have the one on each end of the car holding it on, but once I drill it out, obviously I'll need to go back in and tap it and put new bolts in. Okay, update, I got the sway bar out. First time I've ever had it off of the car. By the way, I do fully intend to put this sway bar back in because most of the driving that we do in these cars is on the highway, and it's a safety issue. The car is lifted, it's less stable even for that reason, and emergency maneuvering could kill you if you don't have a sway bar. You don't want to remove your sway bar or have it removed all the time. If there's a way that you can get it to disconnect when you're on the trail only, I guess that's fine. But anyway, sorry for the rambling and the preaching on that, but I hear a lot of people talk about removing the sway bar. And so anyway, now that we have this off, there's a lot more room for this shock to come out, and so hopefully it'll come right out. Okay, I'm back at it. I got the shock mount from O'Reilly. I had to order 2 of them, and just ordered them yesterday, picked them up today. I decided to go with the new ones instead of the old. Well, here's what the old looked like. I would have had to use a torch just to get it off, and I decided it's better just to use new ones with the condition that those were in. So here's where I'm at now. I got the new spring compressed. I spared you from watching that on the video. So I'm ready just to put it all together. Yeah, this is the first time I've ever compressed a spring this heavy and this strong. I've compressed many springs before, but it is tough. I had to wrench on it a lot, and it was hard. You had to compress enough, and these screws started bowing and bending a little. You might even be able to see that on the video. And it was a little unnerving, but well worth saving the $190 from having the the supplier that sold me these assemble it for me. Now I did have to pay $70 for the two mounts, but you can get them cheaper on Rock Auto if you have the foresight to order them ahead of time. So one thing before I put it together, just want to quickly hit on is the this circlip on the strut is what actually holds this bottom mount of the spring, so that will determine your ride height. I left it on the bottom because I'm using lifting springs, so I would not go higher than that. It's meant for if you're going to use like stock springs and you just want extra height, you can put it in a different slot. It's really easy to move. I didn't even need to use like a retaining ring plier. You just want to make sure that if you do move it, you want to make sure that you are able to rotate this clip by hand to make sure that it's installed correctly, because if it's not in that groove fully, it will destroy it and the shock body, and when you go to assemble it. So this is the old shock and the new shock, and side-by-side comparison. You can see already that the new spring and shock is taller, maybe like almost an inch taller, without even any compression on the spring. So once you put it in the car and the car compresses it, this spring should compress quite a bit more than this one. And so this is the 8.5, or is it 8.9? The front spring, it's the middle of the three on the 4runner. On the how heavy the spring is, it's the middle one. I think it's rated for, depending on which website and which kit you buy it from, it's rated for either the V6 or the V8 with stock front weight and a 2.5 inch lift. So it seems like that's the middle one is the one to go with as long as you don't have like a full metal bumper or a winch. I think the product description page said that you can have up to 100 pounds extra weight on the front. So if you do have like a low profile winch mount in a winch, you might be fine with just this middle rated spring, as long as you don't have the full metal bumper like the ARB bull bar style. So let's get this put on there, and I'm excited to see how the car sits and how it rides with this new shock and spring setup from Bilstein and Old Man Emu. So. Okay, I am so relieved because I think I found the ticket to making it easier to get the bottom mount of this shock into the control arm where it mounts. So I'll take the camera and show you what I'm talking about. So what I did was removed where the ball joint from the lower control arm mounts to the back of the knuckle. There's 2 bolts on either side of the bottom of the ball joint where it just mounts to this. Makes it way easier to push this lower control arm down. Get a pry bar I can show you maybe, but it is super easy, and I'll be able to get this in there way easier than I was before, where it was trying to pull down the whole knuckle, spindle, and upper control arm, and it just wouldn't go before. Look at that, didn't even need to pry, it just went right in. I'm not quite out of the woods yet. I still gotta get this to up into the hole. Okay, that is it, except for the sway bar, and I'm going to wait until I do the other side to reattach that. So this side is pretty much done. Alright, I am just now leaving Grismer Tire. I just got my alignment done, and so they were able to get the camber actually in spec, which he said doesn't always happen when you do a lift kit. Obviously the toe is always adjustable. That's never a problem no matter what you do to the suspension. But the caster is out of spec. However, he described what that does very well. What it controls is your car's resistance to turning, or the ability to maintain going straight. What's really the most important with caster is that both sides need to be within about a ½ degree, and as long as that's the case, then you're not going to notice anything while driving, and it's not going to affect tire wear. So overall, the other two adjustments on the front, the camber and the toe, are within spec. He also used NASCAR as an example of the caster. So he said that, you know, since they always go in a circular track and turn the same direction, that they set the one side, the caster, at like 10 degrees or something ridiculous, and then the other side it's at 0. And what that does is it makes the car want to turn left, and they're fighting it to keep it straight when it's on the straightaway, but when they go to turn left, it like does it, you know, by itself almost. So I'm very happy with the service they provided, and the way that he explained it to me. Absolutely feels great now driving it on the highway compared to this morning, you know, on my way to work. It tracks straight. It doesn't you don't have to fight the steering wheel at all. So they did a great job with the alignment, and I mean, it's an absolute necessity after you do a lift kit. Okay, so here is a picture of the alignment and all the specs. The before is on top. As you can see, almost everything was out of spec before. The camber was at 1 degree and 0.6 degrees. Now the camber is at 0.3 degrees each side. The toe obviously was way out, and now it's, you know, just about perfect. The caster was 1.1 and 0.6. Now it's 1.0 and 0.7. So really all they did is they brought the left and right a little closer together, meaning the numbers are closer together to match more closely. Just to recap, this is the Bilstein 5100 front shocks and the OME Nitrocharger Sport shocks in the rear. The springs are OME 885s in the front and 895s in the rear. This lift kit definitely, with the new shocks and everything, definitely rides so much better than it did before, even on normal roads. But it's going to be even better off-road. For example, last year I was in Canyonlands National Park driving on Potash Road, and it was extremely rough, and the suspension was actually bottoming out on the bump stop over every rough bump that we were hitting, and we were just being thrown all over the road. And this lift kit on a road like that, this suspension would do so much better. So I'm really looking forward to getting off-road on some trails and trying it out, and I think it's just going to be phenomenal off-road. So my old lift kit was a spacer kit. It lifts 1.5 inch in the rear and 2.5 inches in the front. This new kit gives it 2.5 inches lift front and rear, but when I measured before and after, I found that this lift kit raises it about 2 whole inches more in the front than the old lift kit did, and it's about an inch and a half more in the rear. I think that's just due to the stock springs having sag and being lower over time than they were from the factory. Okay, that concludes the video on this lift kit install. I hope you found it helpful. I hope it helps you when you go to choose or install your lift kit. If you liked it, please click the like button. And again, thanks for watching.